Hi, so this video I wanted to go over a principle in Matthieu Pageau's book about the mountain of space or stability or the axle of space and stability, and then the wheel of time, right? And God having something to do with the unification of those two opposites. So the coolest way to understand this symbol is to actually rely on it for your existence, right? So that means skateboarding, basically. You could do it with other things, but I found skateboarding to like force you to really understand certain things about this relationship between space and time, right? So, and how space and time together are doing something that is neither space nor time. So to really drive this home into your body, it's like you get onto a skateboard and it's four wheels covered by a skin, right? And so the wheels have an axle and it's not moving. It's in there and it's not moving, right? So then the wheels rotate around the axle. The wheels are there providing a continuous center for the wheel, because without the wheel would just roll off and not do anything, because its center would constantly move. Whereas with space inhabiting the center of the wheel, the axle, stability, then the rotational action of the wheel is driven into the same place, right? By putting an axle in there, you can maintain the same place inside the wheel. So with no axle, as time moves, the place changes. So nothing occurs, because you'd have to have something be in the same place over time to have any occurrence, right? So by putting the axle in there, it suddenly carries the entire system along with the wheel, but it maintains the stability or the identity of the system as a whole and allows that system to move. Normally when something's maintaining its stability or its identity, it's not moving. It's not changing, because that's the definition of maintaining stability and identity. So when you put the space inside the wheel, all of a sudden you get time, you get motion, and then you also get the deck of the skateboard, which is stability and identity. Right? So this is how the body works at a deep level with the metabolism. You have these circulations happening in the body of blood and nerve and lymph and other cycles happening in the body, the heartbeat or whatever. And then in the middle of that, you have, like in the middle of all of that mechanical action going around in cycles, you have a core identity. So you have a stable, unchanging identity, and that's the the part about you that's not changing is obviously the axle in the middle of the temporal experience of the body and everything that the body's doing. So as you put that unchanging internal, I don't know, I would call it observer or something like that, like the eye, it's just the soul. We'll call it the soul, because it's like, hey, it's you, it's Mike, hey, it's Kurt, right? Like it's the thing at the middle, and you can name it, right? You get a name. The thing in the middle of all this, it gets a name, and so that's going forward. So that the body is like the wheel, and then the soul is like the deck for the spirit. On top of that, like riding. So when you're when you're on a system like this, people say like, oh, get embodied. That means putting the weight of your spirit, the weight of your soul, you put that into the wheel of the body, into these circulation systems, right? So when you do that on a skateboard, you put it into the wheels. If you're not putting your weight into the wheels, you slide off the board. And not only do you want to put it in the wheels, you want to put it into the rotational or the fluidic or the cyclical motion of the wheels. So normally when you stand, you're not standing on time or cycle. But if you stand on a skateboard, you can actually put your weight into the cycling of time of the wheels, and that's what allows you to move forward. It's as you put your weight into time, which is in the cyclical pattern of the wheel, you actually move forward. Right? And if you do it correctly, you move forward with balance, right? So if you feel the rush of time under you in the rotational motion of the wheels, you can feel that rush of time. It's energy, so it feels fluidic. It feels like current. It is current. It's energy. It's current. Same way if you feel into the body, it starts to feel fluidic. So on the skateboard, you can actually feel it. And when you're there, you go down into the wheels, and so you feel where your weight's going. You rest your spirit on the thing holding you up, right? Because these wheels are holding us up. We're on something akin to a wheel. We're on something that is a cyclical event with a solid, non-changing identity or spatial center. And the system is both of those things. It's not the unchanging identity detached from a cyclical wheel of time. Like, both of those things really needs to be happening for us to call it a thing. Right? So some people try and dissect it and say that, oh, I'm only space. And so space and like emptiness without the cycles of time around it is oh, I'm the same as everyone else. We're all one consciousness. Right? That's if you were to dissect the system. But that's an unnatural state, right? Nobody dissects the system. Like, I mean, people do dissect the system, but it's an unnatural state. The only time that you get to a dissected system to where it's like, I'm consciousness, we're all one consciousness, because without this cycle of time around me, my I is identical to everyone else's I. So therefore, I am everyone else's I, sort of thing. Like, that's an unnatural state, because the natural state is right here. Like, I'm the I, figuring out that I'm the I of everyone else's I. And it's like this, that step where it's like, I figured that out. Like, that's because you separated two things unnaturally. Because it's like, you think the imaginary thinks that, and it's like, no, it didn't really ever. That's an unnatural state. It can happen. You can get that to happen where you extract your I from time temporarily, and then you get a pure I, which is undifferentiated from all the other I that's inside of time. So you can really understand this, because it's like, you can be on a skateboard and you can not be feeling any of this, and that means you're clumsy and you fall off, right? So I can tell you this stuff about time and space and all that, and axles and wheels, and you can have an intellectual understanding of it, right? Because this is ultimately how prayer works, and how attention works, and embodiment and everything works as well. It's like, this stuff has to be happening for real. These connections between I and consciousness and where the weight's going has to be happening for real for the skateboard to work. You can understand it all day long, but if you can't do it, then you feel clumsy, which is why skateboarding is awesome, because it's like, everyone feels really clumsy. Like, they get that they're supposed to stand on it and like go like, wee, and have fun and look like they're flying and do tricks and stuff. Like, everyone knows that's the correct thing to do. But when you hop on it, you can't do it whatsoever. You can't even approach it. And so every other discipline, including like prayer and spiritual focus and stuff like that is a similar problem, to where it's not so much do people understand it, it's right. So if you can stand on the wheels, if you can stand on the space axis with the time swirling around it and actually be present there, like if you're distracted somewhere else, you don't have any coordination, you fall off. Right? If you're focusing on the wrong thing, like if you're not on the axle wheel combo that's like holding you up and supporting your existence, if you're not there feeling what's happening, like really feeling and participating, not just feeling but participating, like if you're not participating in the wheels, like if there's something happening to you, if you haven't owned that thing as yourself, then again, lack of coordination. Right? And you can feel it, and then if you do something too hard or too scary, you can break that coordination. And again, your connection between the truth of space and time dancing and your actual functional balance on it is thrown off, right? So, like, the skateboarding is just awesome because everyone's terrible at it when they start. So if you can feel that, then you have some balance and you have some control, you have some dialogue, you have some say in what's happening, right? And as you go forward, it's like the skateboard is lending this energy to the entirety of your body, like the cycling of the wheels is putting energy up to your whole body, up to the very tips of your hairs, because that's what's moving them forward. Like it's to move your hair forward through space requires energy, right? So that there's energy coming from the wheels, like soaking up gravitational energy and then transmitting that energy to every single part of the body. So genuinely, every single part of the body is participating in these wheels, harvesting like gravitational energy or just momentum from a kick or whatever, and then transmitting that to the entirety of the body. You can only think of that as electrical, right? Like if you're going down a hill on wheels, there's something translating, conducting, absorbing gravity, and then transmitting that energy to all the way to your fingertips, your hairs, like the whole body to have it go forward. So you're in this big circuit that's turning gravity into thrust via the motion of these wheels. And so you can start to feel all that and participate in and be part of that. And then that's prayer. That focus, like absolutely in the moment, to where you're participating in the system and you feel where your energy is coming from. Like that's prayer. So you can do that with the skateboard, and then also that's happening with the body itself. So it's like the axle. The eye is like this has this wheel of time, this wheel of the body, the wheel of cyclical nature. So that time is everything. It's the cycles of the seasons. It's the blood cycling. It's everything cycling in reality around the eye. So like everything is swirling around the eye, right? And if the eye stays still, then the spirit moves forward. But if the eye is like shattered by all that movement and it breaks, then suddenly the cycles of time no longer remain focused on the person, and they just go from place to place to place to place to place to place. Like the wheels no longer translate the momentum to the deck, to the stability. Right? So it's like, and this continues to go up because it's like obvious that there's an eye in the middle of time here. Right? There's obviously an eye in the middle of time. But then there's obviously something looking at that eye in the middle of time. And so before we dissect any of this apart, where I start looking at my looking, I'm still an eye in the middle of time. Right? So those things are not me. Like that system as a whole is my soul. and trying to break it apart into time or into space leaves me with two unnatural systems that, yes, I can learn something about, but ultimately this is the real state. Before it was analyzed, dissected, or understood. Like an eye in the center of time. I have to do something to aspect to my to a higher observer. Like the higher observer is there, but I can't say that that's my consciousness, because I have to go up there to get to there. And then this is the default state from where I left. So like my actual identity is just this. And then if I extract my eye from the wheel of time, or I go up the eye to like the deck of the skateboard, of like I'm not just the axle here, I'm actually going up to the deck of the skateboard. And as I go up to the deck of the skateboard, it's like, oh, there do I find the rider of the skateboard? And it's like I made that path and like participated in the rider of the skateboard, but that doesn't mean that I'm the rider. That means that like that higher God, that higher deity, like Christ, is I'm getting to participate in the same way that like when I hop on a skateboard and I'm participating with it, it's not me. Like it doesn't get to claim to be me because I lent it my awareness. Right? So like if God lends a creature its awareness, the creature does not get to claim that it is God because it has lended awareness. So it's like at best, my body is like a wheel in the skateboard of God, right? And if I'm in prayer, that is the wheel looking up for the balance of God, and then God sending down his balance to control how that wheel is going, the same way that I would control a skateboard. And I am just as stupid in comparison to God as a skateboard is stupid in comparison to me. It has actually no life. I'm referencing an imaginary skateboard, literally creating it. It has some amount of life right now because I've given it attention, and I can control it. I can control an imaginary skateboard. Dude, what if you made imaginary beings and you kept your attention on them and they just ran around for real, partially alive, because you're giving them part of your life? I wonder what they could do. Anyway, so like the prayer is when the wheel is seeking, is requesting, like wanting to participate in God. At that point, there's a connection of this higher spirit pressing down into and grounding itself through the wheel, and thus using it to like steer or accomplish its higher goals. And then the inversion is like when people are like, oh, I'm God, because my awareness comes from the gods. Or I am one with everyone because my awareness by itself is undifferentiated from every other person. Without my body and without time, with only unchanging space, I'm the same as everyone else. Right? These are stupid conclusions people have come to, and those would be called heresies and orthodoxy. Is like stupid conclusions that are like either like claiming something to be oneself just because you attained it. Like just because like I observed my observer and I observed my observer, and it's like suddenly I'm seeing that my awareness is coming from, God himself. It's like that doesn't make me God. But but opening to that, such that God grounds his balance and awareness into the body and controls my body the same way that I would, the wheel of my body, the wheel and axle of my body, the time and unchanging identity of my body, the same way that I can control the unchanging stability of the axle on the deck of the skateboard, and I can actually control and kind of influence the direction of time and stick to it. Remain in the center of time even as it goes forward. So it's like that same principle is like really applies to, like, so if you're like doing qigong or something like that, you have this skeletal structure, and through it you can rotate, you can alter the environment by sending energy through your center. You're an unchanged, you have an axle, and then when this spins, like when a wheel spins, it translates energy to its axle, right? So if conversely, if you translate energy to the axle, it'll spin the wheel. The wheel can spin and translate energy to the axle, or the axle can generate energy to spin the wheel. So that's, it's just it's a different type of movement, right? So you're like, oh, how much energy might generate to generate like change, right? I want to get really strong, right? So I need a lot of energy to flow through my axle, and that changes massive things about time. Like I can lift up huge objects or throw people across the room, right? Or you're sitting there and you suddenly realize that it's like the energy to move the sun and day and night and everything around you is already flowing through you. For any of these things to be cycling, that energy current is actually going through the body. That's the interesting part about qigong. It's not so much the cultivation or the storage of the energy or the manipulation of space or time. It's the immense amount of energy already going through already going through the core, the identity. Like the core self that we were talking around which space moves. There's so much movement, and so all of that energy is either going into or out of the core unchanging self, from and then being translated into the higher self. The same way that the wheels transmit all of the energy to the rider, or the rider can kick and transmit all of the energy to the wheels. Right. So there's if the wheels are turning, there's energy flow going up the fractal. Right. So it's a series of mountains with the chaos around it, or axles with the wheel around it. And so it's like in stillness, you can realize that there's tremendous energy. You can become as still as possible, and day and night is still happening, and that equates an equivalent amount of tremendous noise inside the self. But then if you can connect the two and realize, like, oh, this movement here is actually caused from the stars flying by, then it's like that's not seen as internal noise anymore. It's like what used to be noise and agitation suddenly becomes something as peaceful as the night sky, if the two can be correlated. And then you can still, right? So yeah, there's like, it's crazy in that book. Like every single chapter could just be another book easily.